welcome to Capital Sports 3.0. I am one of your co-hosts for this evening. My name is Alan Moore. Well, as most of you already know already. So anyway, we're going to go straight into the action because we have an awful lot to cover, an awful lot to talk about, because basically this week has been, how would you say it, a minefield for sports. But we're going to take it fairly handy. We're going to start off with a really sad case, the Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen breakup, which of course we had covered here before. We just sort of question it, and it didn't really seem to make sense, except that Mr. Brady was actually pushing on with his career at the risk of being unhealthy, because of course he does take a lot of knocks. He does take a lot of knocks, and of course when you're watching him play now, he was never great on his feet. He was never a great mover. He was strong. He was very agile, and he had a great eye and a superb arm. But right now he's taken a lot of hits, and people are saying he's playing zombie-like. Then of course we will be speaking about Eddie Hearn a little bit later on. He's really gone kind of a little bit off the rails. Talk about football's woes, especially in Qatar. Going to put that in just one moment. That's been a bit difficult as well. And of course we will have two legal eagles on to discuss. Britteny Griner, her sentence was reduced, but not by much. So I'm going to bring straight into the chat right now. Andrew Flint. Andrew, good evening. And one thing, I'm going to put up this photo. This, of course, is when Tom did the unimaginable and won the Super Bowl with a team that was basically derided for a long, long time. I remember when my uncle was one of the shareholders, they were completely laughed at, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But it is all ending in tears between himself and Gisele, and they have now, applied for divorce. It's an awful situation. We discussed it, and they keep saying that they don't have the same goal. It is odd though, isn't it? Because they will be coming up on their 13th, March 2009, so their 13th anniversary right now. Andrew, what do you reckon is behind this? Because a lot of people are saying it's because she's worried about his health, but there seems to be questions about that as well.
Well, I think there are obviously going to be a lot of factors that are not publicly broadcast because this is a private matter. I mean, they can't avoid the fact if they're going to divorce that everybody's going to know about it. I suspect very strongly that, like we've discussed, not just in this sport, but in an all top-level sports, the adjustment from playing to post-career life is very, very difficult. And I think perhaps it is already taking its strain already. Now, we know that Gisele has asked him to basically stop sooner. And he's proven that he can still play, like you just alluded to, winning the Super Bowl with an unfancied team. There's a huge amount of speculation that's been flying around. So they had to come out with something sooner or later, whether it was this unfortunate departure. Any situation like this is awful when there are kids involved. But I think I wouldn't say they were pressured into an announcement, but there had to be a conclusion one way or the other. Otherwise, it would be endless amounts of yellow press, red top media reports about it, speculation. Look, they are both huge figures in their own careers. They've made enormous careers of themselves. Now, that's not completely unheard of, but I'd say the balance of how much they've achieved within their respective careers is actually, I'd say, relatively unusual. And I think perhaps that may have contributed towards it. When you have a leading sports star who is married to somebody who perhaps isn't a famous name at the top of their game, this is going to sound awful, perhaps as an acceptance. Look, I know you're the one in the public eye. I'm going to be more understanding of it. Gisele has achieved so much in her own modelling career. She's made huge amounts of money, been widely successful. Perhaps she thinks, well, hang on a minute, it's not necessarily me who should be the one giving up my life for you. So I think there are a number of dynamics probably involved. How much each one is more important than the other, we won't know, but I suspect the power dynamic is probably involved, shall we say. Muted. That's the earliest yes, I think.
Thank you. I got through it. Okay, so in both careers, there is an expiry date. She's 42, he's 45. He can't play forever, but he can go on and coach, go on and coach. He can manage. He is, he has that personality and a great sort of, he can run for Congress. He can go into politics because he's beloved. He's, very much
Right.
central right, shall we say. He's not right, but he's definitely conservative. And so is she. But this could scupper because, the American public are not going to be too happy. This is not a Donald Trump figure who's going to make people laugh. He's someone who wants to make people think.
Well, it's not the model, beautiful American dream family. Exactly that. I mean, look, Tom Brady already took steps to prolong his career as long as he possibly could by agreeing to take, was it Wednesdays, I think, or at least one day a week without training. Now, given his quality, his position in particular as a quarterback, which is obviously a naturally protected position in some sense. Of course, you've still got to be a phenomenally alert athlete, but with the way that American football has changed to give quarterbacks so much protection, it is possible to really prolong careers. I mean, look at the quarterbacks. Look at the age of, Aaron Rodgers into his 40s. And this is something that I think gave him hope that he really could push it as long as he possibly could. I think the truth is there's very little Tom Brady can do to diminish his reputation, especially in New England. But there is an expiry date, like you say. I'm not necessarily sure whether Tom Brady has met his expiry date yet. I think
I agree. I mean, we can ask questions about the people he's been working with and what he's taking to stay young. He has to, that's between him and his conscience and his body, because if and that is Gisele has gotten her lips plumped up, so it's not like she's going to say, "Oh, you shouldn't be taking those things, it's bad for your health." She's pumping her lips up, so fair enough. Let her do it. If that makes her happy, if that makes you feel good, let her do it. Let him do it as well. But for me, I do think. No, I'm sorry, I'm very pro-doping right now. But the thing that sort of worries me about this situation, and people are, all these sources are coming out and speaking about it, like family sources. Now, this is most likely 99%. The source close to the family. That's a PR agency for the manager or whatever it is.
Yeah.
One thing that has been an odd situation are some allegations that have been leaking out about infidelities, not on Tom's part, but on Gisele's part. And that really threw me. And I thought, okay, this is just conspiracy. No, it was actually some people were bringing it up and speaking about it, saying he loves her so much and he just can't take it anymore about what's going on. Like, okay. But at the same time, she speaks highly of him, he of her. There seems to be very, very good, like a lovely rapport between them. However, this is what brings us on to this next topic before we go on to Qatar. Antonio Brown. Now, Antonio, we know, we covered him before. Whatever's wrong with him, we don't know. He is in more and more trouble as time goes on. He has been trolling Tom Brady, as in putting out an Instagram photo with his head crudely cut in to Tom. I'm not going to put it here, put in on top of Tom's head to say, that he's having this affair with Gisele. And he's also been speaking with journalists that are friendly with him for whatever reason, and not so friendly with Tom, and looking for gossip as well. Because quick rundown from this, not a comprehensive but a decent article from the Daily Mirror from last week. Is that this is a man who was like huge for the Pittsburgh Steelers. People loved him. He was dominating the game. He was the highest paid NFL wide receiver for, I think it was for 2 seasons. I think it was when he was with the Oakland Raiders, and then he got kicked out of there. He's had so many problems, from sexual misconduct charges, and then when he goes down, eventually ends up down. And Tom thinks he's a great wide receiver, and that's what he wants. You want a player who can catch the ball because Tom throws it quite hard. And Antonio then strips off when he's been benched and walks off the field, and then basically out of Tampa Bay. Before you start to speak, Andrew, we're going to bring Isolt in. But Andrew, Isolt, welcome this evening. I hope all's okay. You're feeling okay right now.
Yeah. We're in the house of the damned. Very appropriate for Halloween.
It is. It was the night before Christmas, the night before Halloween. Andrew, Antonio Brown, I mean, it's worrying, but again, he is pushing this out to friends in the media, what could be deemed as black PR against Tom, saying that Gisele, she has cheated on him, Tom can't take anymore, and that's why they're divorcing. But Antonio has his own problems.
Yeah, he certainly does. I mean, this I would say bizarre, but worryingly, it's not so bizarre when we know who we're talking about with Antonio Brown here. This latest stunt revelation, I'm not entirely sure what to call it, where he claims he's raising money for charity by making this sort of joke, this sort of meme, this sort of I'm not quite sure what is running through his head. Either he's not being advised at all, or he's being advised by some people who are possibly consuming substances, not giving him the most level-headed advice. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what his end game is. There's always an end game, no matter how illogical it may seem to most of us in the public. Now, if you are looking to get back into sports, for example, staying relevant, in your own head, however harebrained it may seem to us, I can only assume there is some part of him that thinks, I want to still be part of the conversation. It's almost as if he cannot go a single year without a drama centering around him, because I think perhaps there's a part of his character that believes, if I am the crazy Antonio Brown that nobody can possibly forget, that will just be the main story, and I'll get a contract out of it somehow. I know that makes no sense, but then little about him seems to. So who knows?
I think I completely agree. I think I'm just going to start with the analogy I made about Tom and Gisele. They are very akin to, and again, showing my age here, Victoria Beckham and David Beckham. Both were of equal fame. Post her career as a singer, and no one probably thought she's going to amount to much because she wasn't very much the singing member of the Spice Girls. Victoria has gone on to be a huge global name in fashion. And David has gone on to be a huge global name in Qatar. But hey, swings and roundabouts. But despite all of that, they're equal level of fame. So all the times they were dogged with rumors of separation, they kind of got through it. And as a result, they are now in a very rare category of those Hollywood level celebrities that they're a power couple, because anything they put their hand to now, no matter what it is, again, David is living proof, they still seem to come out of it looking good. And it's a very interesting dynamic because Gisele and Tom had all of that. And I think it's just, as Alan rightly pointed out, there was a huge pressure for them to come out and say nothing or say something, because you couldn't go on saying nothing because you also have children involved. And they both do come across as very caring parents. And that's the important thing. I just think in terms of Antonio Brown, any journalist whose source ends with Antonio Brown, just stop there. Think about what you're doing and think about who you are taking your information from. I don't think he's advised by anyone. I think it is a bizarre, I don't even think it's an attempt to get a contract. I think it's almost a narcissistic attempt to be in the media. And it's a very, very, like, for someone who, like Tom Brady, comes across as just someone who isn't a nasty individual. I don't think he has it in him to have riled up Antonio Brown in such a way that he would be coming out with this sort of ludicrous nonsense. And as nice, I'm sure, as and easy on the eye as Antonio Brown is, like Gisele, okay, I don't want to say punching because it sounds like I'm accusing him of some sort of domestic violence or battery, but it's a bizarre thing to do. And if it was someone else, you may look at it and give it more airtime. And what I think is very worrying, and you've pointed out rightly, Alan, as well, is that the type of media that use him as a source are the very anti-Tom Brady, not because of it being Tom Brady, but what the image of Tom Brady is. He's the white American quarterback.
And
with the
this is
model
it.
wife.
Exactly.
Love it.
And you said, no, you both of you have, on Antonio Brown, you both nailed it. Where, yeah, Andrew, I agree that, we see like who's advising him, and the scary thing is nobody is. And it's kind of one of those things that a professor of mine said, which sticks with me even now in this mental world we're in right now. And when people talk about like COVID, that it's like, the great reset and so on. Now, people can have their opinions. They can believe that COVID plan like is to thin out the populations. Okay, fine. Put us all under control. Fine. But as my professor said, an archaeologist, and he said that that's what we believe. We think that there's this cabal, the World Economic Forum, they're controlling everything, or the Bilderberg Group, or whoever it is, or Posh and Becks, whoever it may be. They're controlling everything we do in the world. The scary thing is nobody's controlling it. And I think that's what's happened to Antonio Brown. And there are some. I'm not going to name one of the journalists, because I do know this, because this journalist, we get on quite well, but he writes for he writes for an online publication. He's really good, but he was only told me about this stuff. I'm like, he can't put this out, and he goes, oh yeah, and then he put bits out. And he had three people he spoke with. One was Antonio Brown. Now, Antonio Brown recently was in May. Pictures came out that he was exposing himself in Dubai. Okay, he's an idiot. I do believe, as well as being narcissistic, I do believe there's some issues involved in brain damage. I really do. There are some of the hits you can see, especially when you play with Sheffield Steelers. That's an ice hockey team. For Pittsburgh Steelers, when you play for Pittsburgh Steelers, there was a couple of hits that left him gone. And we discussed this not too long about the absolute. We showed it. We showed how the brain damage that's been suffered by players. And I worry about that. But at the same time, going back to Tom and Gisele, that's perfect analogy with Posh and Becks. But I think it's slightly different in that Victoria Beckham came in as a kind of a upper middle class girl, doing quite well. Came in, had the look. Girls wanted to be like her. She was part of a huge movement for a young girl. I mean, for girls.
She was also the brains of the operation.
Exactly, and she was so well put together mentally. Got David Beckham. They melded well together. Okay, then they had issues. They came back together. I think with Gisele, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think there's a second half in her career. She's no. It's gone from the days of being with Naomi Campbell and I was going to say Kate Winslet, not Kate.
Kate Moss.
Kate Moss. That's one. Yeah. Cindy Crawford, Claudia Schiffer. She doesn't have that second. I don't believe that, and that's why I think that it's a real pity. And I don't know, but look, we discussed that, we've done it to death. So the next one up that we're going to put up that is important, and I'm going to ask it to you about this. This is, not this one, of course, that's where we've done. This is the one about the cleverly, wasn't so clever. He said that gay World Cup fans had to show respect in Qatar. Now, that in a normal world seems logical. It's like if you go somewhere, if you go to Saudi Arabia, don't walk around with your backside hanging out of your jeans, or don't just get drunk and fall across the road or something, because if you're going to get into trouble there. You have to respect the culture. People will say, "Oh, people should respect the culture of our country, respect the culture of our country." Okay, so then do it when you go abroad as well. Gisele, start with you on this. I mean, how far can this go, or how far should this go? And should people be, this kind of respect for Qatar? How, in what sense is that they don't drink, they don't sleep with people of the same sex, they don't sleep with people that they're not married with? Where do we go?
Respect for a culture is a very different thing to what's being suggested in that instance. Something that is criminalized in a country, it's not about respect. What he's suggesting is, if you have views outside of that country, please don't bring them there. There's a difference between doing something like drinking in a country where drinking is prohibited, where you're committing an illegal act. He's going further than saying don't go and act in a homosexual manner there, basically. He's saying don't do anything that comes out and shows your support for the gay community. And that's how it reads. It very much reads as a, when you go there, don't be showing that you have support for something that the Qataris don't agree with and criminalize. And I think that sentence in itself is just, it's such a polarizing, his comments are so polarizing, but it's also at a complete opposite to the message football as a sport is trying to give us. Actually, about half an hour ago, I was watching Sky Sports News where there was a presentation from some of the WSL players to the first LGBTQ referee in the game. And like, you're going, this is what football is trying to say to us on one hand, and on the other they're saying go to Qatar. And then you have government ministers who shouldn't be in a position to comment on these things if they don't understand the fundamentals of what they're saying. They have every opportunity to have someone proofread what they're going to say, or indeed advise them if they're going to give it during an interview as to what the parameters are. The message that sends to any openly gay people traveling to Qatar, whether they're traveling there just to support or happen to be part of a team, is that when you are there, your version of showing respect should be to make sure it's not clear to anyone there that you are supporting either the gay community or LGBTQ community, or that you are identifying with them. And I just think it's the reason it's getting so much criticism is not just people supporting the LGBTQ community. It's the fact that comments like that are so at odds with what football is currently trying to portray every time we look at the TV, because their message is becoming very clear. And for a minister to speak like that is just a very backward step. No one is suggesting, what you're suggesting is go to a country and by all means suggest that don't be loutish, don't disrespect their culture, don't go to religious areas uncovered, etc., etc. But they're basically, this goes a step further. It's saying, if you're planning on bringing your rainbow laces, leave them at home. If you're planning on bringing a t-shirt with a gay pride flag on it, leave it at home. It's saying, do not outwardly support something that they're against. And it really galls me. And I think it sends the entirely wrong message. I understand where respect comes from. That's not about, he's not suggesting respect.
Okay. Andrew, is he suggesting respect or submission?
I think his intentions weren't actually as awful as they're being made out. I think what he was trying to do, but made the point horrifically, was that, look, you just have to be realistic. However much most people would love the society in Qatar to change and become more accepting of everybody, regardless of your orientation. The fact is, right now, it just simply, literally, by law, is not accepted in the same way. So I think what he was trying to do was say, look, you just have to, much as I would love to say, be exactly the same as you are at home, it perhaps wouldn't be advisable to go expecting exactly the same acceptance as you would expect back home. Now, the way it came out was you should bend to their demands, but I think what he possibly should have said was, look, we have to be realistic about this. If you want to be exactly the same, and you should absolutely have the right to be like that, the simple fact is, as worrying as it is, as unpalatable as it is, the reality is you will not be received in the same way. And I think the point should have made should be more advisory rather than bend to Qatar's rules. And I think the message does make all the difference, because to be honest with you, I think a lot of what he said, to be fair, was relatively reasonable, in the sense that he said, look, I have spoken to people about what is accepted, what the rules are, what is legal in Qatar. Whether you think that's right or wrong is not the point at this moment in time, because we're not going to change that within 3-4 weeks' time. But he should have made it clear, look, I'm only telling you what to expect. And if he had presented it in that way, I think, honestly, nobody could possibly, in fact, if anything, he should have been praised for saying, instead of saying, you should be able to go and do exactly as you do back home, that would have been irresponsible, because quite frankly, that could lead to people being in uncomfortable situations. Whereas if he had just been advisory, I don't think there would have been a problem.
Do you want to come in on that?
Andrew made some really, really fair comments there. And I suppose for the general fan going to support, he's very right. You need to be able to feel safe there, and it's the way the message is delivered, and say, look, we're telling you these things because you need to be wary of what the rules there are. But rather than saying have respect, say this is what will and won't be acceptable. Because it's just the way, when you phrase things a certain way, words have meaning, and the impact to people can be inflammatory. The other thing I just said in our group there is, I think the safest way for a message to be put across, rather than fans doing it in support of anything that may be viewed as anti-Qatari policy, is for a high-profile team to take any small step to make clear their support for a particular community, because they're not going to be shipped off anywhere. So, you know, wouldn't be any harm to see a few of the Brazilian players deciding to come with a few rainbow braids, or, you know, whatever's cool and in fashion and in vogue. But it's just still a pity. And it just, when you see, like, literally half an hour ago watching that on TV going, this is a great move for football. It's a big thing that they were promoting as one of the main features of their evening. That, and one of the teams is on a run at the moment. But you kind of go, if this is the message, then how the hell do you go to Qatar? It's just very difficult, I think. And I think we could end up all really enjoying the tournament.
Yeah,
but we have to do it with that eye in the background going.
Also, when we look at it, when there is this discussion, and we discussed it before, and I had a discussion during the week, actually on Thursday after a quiz, about what is political protest, what's allowed and what's not allowed. And this was in the background. There was a German guy who said to me that, he said, I would be horrified, he said, as a German, that if someone went in and started, you know, with a swastika, he said, because immediately I'd be, oh, Germans, bad Germans. He said, so if I don't want that, if I disallow that, does that mean that all should be disallowed, or some should be allowed? Do we elevate some causes above others? Should the Palestine flag be waved by fans, or be, you know, worn as patches on players' jerseys? Because that has been pushed on some of the teams from North Africa, for example, that they should be protesting and showing their solidarity, when some of them are kind of going, well, we don't know about that.
I suppose this isn't solidarity with a country. It isn't solidarity with a political movement. It isn't solidarity with one side of a war. It's solidarity with an entire part of our global population. And I think that's what differentiates it here. This isn't about supporting an organization. It's about supporting people. And I think it's very easy to suggest that it's a political protest. If you're a person within that community in Qatar, every day must be a very, very scary place to be.
But that then goes into, what about, what about, why not? People who will then want to protest for BLM, for Black Lives Matter. People who want to protest about the subjugation of Uyghurs. Well, you know, again, I'm just saying it, you know, of Uyghurs in China. I think that there needs to be a stance taken. I think it's even more than about, Qatar is a lightning rod. They're saying they should do this because they're Arabs and so on, and they're so backward and ignorant. I'm kind of, that doesn't, I kind of feel awkward with that, because I think move beyond LGBTQ plus, and just basically say, okay, look, we're here to
just human rights in general is
exactly. We're here to play
football. It should be the cause.
And when people criticize Qatar, saying, oh, because of all, like, basically slave labor, the kafala, that you have to hand in your passport and so on, I did the same in Saudi Arabia, and I'm not from Nepal, and I wasn't getting paid $10 a week. It's an awful situation. It's something that I think is really wrong. It's really disgusting. I was shocked by it. It made me feel very unsafe. However, that's what they do, and all of it, it's about control. Simply about control from their part, that they want to control people, what they're doing. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's outmoded, but at the same time, I had to, you know, get it, you know, work and earn a salary.
I completely agree. But I suppose then we have to, so let's look at other global sporting events, like how many people died in the preparation for the games in London. And I think that's what the difference is, and it always will be.
Exactly. I think it's a volume. I think
I don't think it should be just about the fact that it's an Arab nation, and that's the problem. Too many people will just as instantly go, it's because it's an Arab nation. it's more a global picture of what has gone on. And
Yeah.
I think sports players also, it's one of the few platforms, whether it be the Olympics or the World Cup, where if there is a cause that matters, it's one of the few times that it can be highlighted, and you know that the eyes of the world and not just, let's say, Europe or your whatever group of teams are on it. And I suppose, it's just an opportunity.
Andrew, I'll let you give you a few
Yeah,
seconds.
there's just one. There's one thought is occurred to me over this chat, is that, look, we're talking about the fans, people going to Qatar. I want to just focus on that for a second. If you are going to a country, regardless of what your opinion of that country, you're going as a guest of that country. Now, I'm not saying that means by going you automatically agree with everything. Quite the opposite. I think you need to go and challenge, but challenge naturally, organically, if that makes sense. Go with respect for the fact that you're visiting a country. Not respect as in you accept everything. Respect as in you don't accept everything, but you don't go in head banging thinking, right, well, because it, like you just mentioned, because of where you are, because of the identity of you as an Arab nation, I'm automatically going to be defensive and defiant and be almost a little more militant with how I protest. That is only going to continue and worsen a situation, a lack of understanding between both sides. So the respect comment, just going back to what Cleverly said about respect, there is an element still that I still think is actually important to keep respect as a visitor. If you are going, you're going to visit a place. No matter where you're going, you have to show at least some level, tiny level of respect. Otherwise, it is pointless trying to protest against what you're not happy with from their point of view. I'm not saying you mean you agree with everything and accept it, but there is a level of respect that needs to be shown. Challenge it whilst you're there.
Look, just to close it out, one part I think that was like taken and twisted out of all proportion was, he said, that one of the things I would say for football fans is, please do be respectful of the host nation. They are trying to ensure that people can be themselves and enjoy the football. And I think with a little bit of flex and compromise at both ends, it can be a safe, secure, and exciting World Cup. And of course, the man who never saw a payday that he thought was too dirty, Gary Lineker, replied, "Whatever you do, don't do anything gay." Is that the message? And of course, the
Gary, jump on any hashtag opportunity. Why don't you?
There you go. Okay, folks, we're going to go to the break right now and come back. We will be joined by another guest. Where lots of people on tonight. Alexander Zotov, a guest for Wales Coast last week. So we'll be back in just a moment with some more Capital Sports 3.0.
Whilst legal proceedings are ongoing, in the meantime, he reiterates in no uncertain terms, he is a clean athlete.
Yeah, well, it's very easy for him to prove that, isn't it? But a lot of these things are sideshows, aren't they? They're distractions and deflections.
Exactly.
The idea, I hear Eddie Hearn saying things about me, and I think, what's that got to do with the question? What? Because I lost a bunch of money in a football club, we can then talk about the idea that I'm not in a position to be able to question you about the manner in which you've operated. Let's talk about your conduct. Let's talk about a blue chip promoter that seems to be in the camp of allowing a fight to go on, a fight that had a real duty of care responsibility behind it because it was a catch weight fight with a lot of controversy about the weights. So there was a real need to make sure these fighters were protected. And you appear to have been in the camp of allowing that fight to go on when you knew on September the 23rd that a drugs test had been failed. Who cares who leaked this? That's another deflection. The fact of the matter, it landed in the public domain, and the reasons why the fight was stopped, because if it was going to be stopped and Eddie and his little gang were going to stop it, then they should have stopped selling tickets and commercial sponsorship during the period of the 23rd of September to the 5th of October. There was no intention to stop this fight. The only reason it stopped is because it landed in the public domain, and quite frankly, who cares? And here's another thing that needs to be debunked that I heard yesterday. The idea that Conor Benn voluntarily signed up to the VADA testing. Conor Benn was excluded from the top 15 of the WBC last year because he refused to sign up to it. He wanted to be in the top 15 of WBC. It's mandatory to sign up to VADA. So by being in the top 15 of WBC, he has to sign up to VADA.
The man that Simon Jordan, the former owner of Crystal Palace, is talking about just there is Eddie Hearn. Now, Eddie Hearn, I first met him back in 1991 in June in Romford in the Matchroom Boxing Gym. That's where the one that his dad had owned. It was also associated with snooker. I was 17 years old and I was sparring with Francis Sampofa as he was preparing for a revenge match with Robbie Regan, and also the British flyweight title was at stake. Now, I didn't really quite get the boxing gym politics at the time. Eddie was known around the place to the boxers and the coaches as the little prince. If you pandered to him, his dad would look after you. I didn't quite notice. So only when Herbie Hyde took me to one side, whispered in my ear, listen, play nice with the kid and all will be okay. And he was a good kid, 12 years of age, just turned 12 just a week or two before, as far as I remember. Eddie wanted and wants to be a boxer, but his dad wouldn't allow him into the ring. That was his greatest goal because he looked up to all these great figures like Chris Eubank, who was in the gym, and Herbie Hyde, and so on and so forth. Admiration, love, and a feeling of achievement. That's what Brian Peters, who's the manager of Katie Taylor, as we said, that Eddie ultimately craves. When our 2012 gold-winning medal Olympic champion Katie Taylor turned pro, it was kind of inevitable. But when she signed with Barry Hearn, there were a lot of people within Irish boxing who were a little bit worried about it because they felt she might have gone with the wrong person, somewhere in a bit of despair. Like his friend Jake Paul, like his former friends from MTK Global, Eddie doesn't really care about boxers that much, unlike his dad. If you're injured, Eddie will say, I have a doctor who'll sort you out. Get into the ring and make me money. It's one of his little kind of phrases that he would say to people, like, make me money. And it's a nice thing. Eddie's not a boxing promoter. He's not a sports promoter. He's an impresario, and he's damn good at it as well. If he thought that putting Katie Taylor into the ring with a she-wolf would do the numbers or get the numbers, he would do it and make a lot of money off it as well. If he retired tomorrow morning, he could live happily for the rest of his life. But there's three things that Eddie wants. One is money, two is fame, and three is to be loved. A lot of people do love him. A lot of people make money from him. A lot of people make money from him. Once he has all those three, the health and well-being of Conor Benn, Canelo Alvarez, or Anthony Joshua, in my opinion, doesn't really matter so much. Gisele, you've been following this all week. Am I wrong about Mr. Hearn?
I would say you're right on a lot of points overall. What I will say, and it's not a defense of Eddie Hearn, but as someone who attends boxing shows by all the major promoters, I will say Matchroom as a product, what they put on a night, irrespective of the card, but in terms of the experience for a viewer or fan attending a Matchroom event, you know that there has been a huge amount has gone into it, and it's meant to be the type of, like, boxer are now moving down a route where it's more like going to a concert and a badly organized one, whereas Matchroom, they've streamlined this event. They have turned certain fighters into global names, so much so that fighters were willing to walk away from Sky, which is the more attractive in terms of domestic audiences, to go with Matchroom and DAZN, which obviously was a subscription service, and it's a very different prospect. In terms of what you've said, in the last few weeks, I think a lot of people have found it, and particularly those who have a real interest in boxing, very difficult to watch what has gone on in the sport. We probably, as a general boxing fan base, could have taken the idea that a test was failed in September and all parties, despite it being a very bad decision, but that all parties as a group made a collective, horrendous decision to continue on with the fight, despite knowing what they knew. So we could all go, look, this was a really bad moment for boxing. We will get through it because, people make mistakes. But then you discover that there was a previous failed test. And then you think, hold on, because there are two promoters in this who have a incredibly selfish approach to this, because not only has Eddie Hearn pushed the narrative that the fight should go ahead and that it should continue on irrespective, but you also have Calais, who is representing Chris Eubank Jr. And he is saying that it's okay for his fighter, who, let's face it, we all saw what he looked like when he had made the weight. He made the weight irrespective of the fight not proceeding. He was emaciated, is a nice way of putting it.
It was a catchweight fight, so like
yeah, he still had to make a weight. Yeah, he really did have to. So you have to wonder how two promoters thought it was okay, because they're the people making the decisions when the boxers are focused on their training. In Conor Benn's case, his diet of purely eggs, and in Chris Eubank Jr.'s case, his focus on boiling down in weight and getting down to that weight. And I just think the damage that was done to boxing, we kind of all took a week off there where we went, it's okay, look, we have a great night for women's boxing. I shouldn't call it girls boxing, women's boxing. It distracted everyone. There was a big high. Everyone felt good about boxing. Last night, there was a great win for Katie Taylor. Everyone felt good about boxing. But in the middle of that, we had the fact that there were 2 failed tests. And I don't care whether it was a contaminated substance or not, and whether they can actually make out. And in the end, good for them if they can show that Conor Benn actually was unfortunate enough to have a contamination that wasn't through illegal taking of a substance. But that does not stop the fact that the minute there is a failed test, any one failed test, the fight should not have proceeded.
You can listen, Isolt. In football, I don't give a damn what Klopp does with the Liverpool players, whether they're all wheezing and taking.
They're not going out and beating each other in the head.
Exactly. The worst you're going to do is go like break down their own bodies and have injuries and so on, which they have had. Rugby, American football, ice hockey, and boxing, wrestling as well, UFC as well. Failed test, no stop. And look, I'm going to bring Alexander Zotov. He is hiding at the moment, but he has a lovely background. I've seen it just a moment ago. So Alexander is coming straight. Alexander, your background's gone.
Hi.
Your background has disappeared. There's a beautiful Arctic background behind you when I saw you.
It was Lake Baikal, but I had it through Opera, and Opera has VPN for me. I mean, because all the restrictions we have in Russia. But I had to, but everything was slowing down, so I had to change to Google Chrome.
Okay.
And now I mean, it's really hard to get Baikal back.
Okay. Well, that's okay. We're okay. Like, it's a beautiful background anyway.
I have my home on my back.
I'm gonna, before we come to you, Alexander, but I'll just ask Andrew. Andrew, this whole thing, I mean, as Gisele, we said that, that boxing as being a fight sport, it has to be very careful with the fighter's health. This comes to what we discussed last week with Simona Halep. Basically, the thing is, get out there. When's your next tournament? Get out and play. No one really gives a damn about the athlete in the end of the day.
I think, look, I'm going to try and take the positive out of this episode. I think this has exposed what realistically we've known goes on very, very widely throughout many sports, but like you mentioned, particularly worryingly, dangerously with direct combat contact sports. It's exposed who cares about what. And look, if we can take anything from this, if we can learn anything from this, what he sort of mentioned about Eubank Jr.'s weight dropping worryingly so, that I would say is almost bad enough to stop a fight. I can't understand how that's still out, but I think genuinely we have to use this as an experience for the sport. If you are going to have something like this where the entire world has seen the timeline, it's indisputable the timeline that's happened, the very basics of a failed test should be absolutely categorical. Now, I'm not sure what the most productive step forward would be here. Are you going to stop Eddie Hearn allowed to promote any more fights for the next 6-12 months because of his irresponsibility? Something tells me that is not likely to happen or possible to happen. But he sort of is shaking head. I thought she probably thought it wouldn't happen. But look, it's out in the open. It's very clear. And I think if the scrutiny stays on, not just obviously Eddie Hearn, but any promoter, I think that is got to be at least partly a positive, because hopefully more and more scrutiny will be held, more and more knowledge about how agreements are signed, promotional agreements, agreements with VADA for inspections. Maybe it's not the worst thing in the world, because at least the fight in the end didn't go ahead, and we can learn from this.
Yeah.
Boxing is a short memory.
Yeah,
A very
that's
short
true.
memory. Look at Canelo. Every time he fights now, and no one mentions Cambuterol.
No,
We all talk about
that was the
it.
wildly positive. That was the wildly positive hope. Realistically, I know for well absolutely nothing is going to happen, but I can dream.
Tyson Fury supposedly was eating the testicles of an uncastrated boar, and that's how he got massive amounts of performance-enhancing drugs into his system. And then, of course, when this farmer who had sold it to him got a visit from the Gypsy Boys, suddenly he went quiet and said, "Oh wait, well, no, it wasn't my boar. I didn't do it. It wasn't my uncastrated
Typical
boar."
Sunday dinner.
What a load of balls!
A load of balls. Okay, Alexander. We discussed this last week with Simona Halep. Regardless of everything else, in we were just saying, like in American football, rugby, boxing, UFC, or MMA, there has to be really strict controls in terms of performance-enhancing drugs, especially ones that build up strength and stamina, because it is a sport where you can literally kill somebody.
Well, I mean, I can only say yes, sure. I mean, there's no other. I mean, I don't think there should be any other opinion on that. I mean, I don't understand doping in let's say football or soccer. I mean, in European football, but if you're talking about the big guys from American football, and I'm watching Dallas Cowboys playing now and waiting for Washington Commanders to come on with Indianapolis Colts in just I don't know 20-30 minutes, but it's a dangerous sport. Boxing is a very dangerous sport also, and of course you should protect the athletes there as any way possible. I mean, how there can be any other opinion on that?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, what I'm actually quite happy about right now is that you are calling Washington Commanders without any kind of like Twitch or kind of like it's the Commanders. You're just.
I'm gonna put my jersey. I mean, Washington Redskins jersey, my hat, my lucky hat, and I also have a jacket now.
Oh yes, I saw it for your birthday. Of course.
Yeah, I got it for my birthday. So I have almost everything Redskins. I need my underwear and pants, and and my bed, whatever you put on the bed, the pillows and everything. So if you see those somewhere on the flea market, buy them for me.
Going to move, go back slightly before we go forward, and that's something that turned out just a bit Qatar. And Alexander, of course, you were involved in the World Cup in Russia, especially in the anti-discrimination project, and like kicking racism out of football and so on, and the protocols that were being brought in and enforced. This is something that came up from a how to say, like a group who were like protesting, and they were basically saying this is what quote, Qatar welcomes you, but you can't do this. And this was accepted as real, and people were spreading, going, "Oh my God, look what the Qataris are doing." So it was like no alcohol, no same-sex homosexuality, and so on and so forth, and no immodesty. You have to cover like all these things, which Qatar immediately came out and said no, but it had to be debunked in the media. Starting with you, Alexander. I mean, have you ever seen a World Cup, as bad as it was for Russia? Have you ever seen a World Cup that has been so plagued with scandal and problems as Qatar?
What do you mean, as bad as it was for Russia?
There was.
It was a great World Cup, no?
Yeah, it was a great World Cup, but it just in terms of like say, well, especially
external criticism.
Yeah,
and
there was, and actually, I mean, yeah, in many cases, unfair, I should say, but we did a good job with Alexei Smertin, I think, with the anti-discrimination campaign and everything. So, and we had a lot of work done, and I think things. you've been living in Russia, in Moscow for many years, but you know that we're not racist or anything like that. We're kind of, sometimes people could get aggressive, not in Moscow, maybe in some areas where they have never seen people of other race, but we don't. It's not in our blood, I think. So for Qatar, I was born in Libya, and I've lived for a few years in Syria, and I've traveled around Middle East, and I've been to many of the Gulf countries. We also have, in Tatarstan or Dagestan or Chechnya in Russia, which are very Muslim and very strictly Muslim areas of Russia. And it's really hard to, I have different thoughts on, and I've heard your discussion before, and it's a tough issue because the societies, the Muslim societies, I think, are very strict in their rules, and it's really hard to, change their way of living and their way of thinking. And it's been like hundreds of years it was the same, and it's practically non-changeable. Although we already see that in Saudi Arabia, women can drive a car, or they have opened cinemas for not only for women but for men also. So some changes are happening, but guys, don't expect anything quick to happen. So it has to. It will change, of course, but it will be changing very, very slowly. And
I will
from
say,
my point of view, there won't be any revolution.
No, rather than say that women can drive a car, I'd say they're allowed to drive a car, because there is the question still if women are able to drive
Wait,
a car.
stop it now. Stop it now. Don't make any criticisms.
Sorry, yeah, but I'm a Russian guy.
No, that's me. That's
very dangerous.
Even though I grew up in the States, I sometimes make mistakes.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, I meant allowed to drive a car.
Yeah, I have questions. Tim definitely thinks women are bad drivers.
I'm going with my wife quite often when she's driving, and she can drive. I'm all like this because she's driving so fast for me. This is,
I understand you. That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to finish this little small topic with Gisele. Andrew, I'm going to just ask you this. When is the news been thrown out about about Qatar and so on? Do you think that it's the same way as, for example, the English media, and it was the English media, hyped up that if you come to Russia, you'll be killed? They did the same in 2012. Go to Ukraine or Poland, you'll be beaten to death. If you are, there's all these, neo-Nazi fans who are like, doing anti-Semitic salutes, and they're calling out racists from Metlis, Kharkov, and so on. And if you go there, Sol Campbell came and said, if you go there, you'll be killed. There isn't the same kind of threats about it, but it's kind of like, if you're going to go and drink or be gay, then you're in trouble.
Well, look, I remember very, very clearly I remember the BBC documentary about Russia's hooligan army, and the person who went out to investigate it, he ended up wearing a GoPro in a field with the old Stiena na Stiena tradition, which it does still happen. It does still happen, but it is unbelievably restricted between very, very specific groups of fans, way out of the city centre. It is something that will happen, and probably happens in more countries than we realise. But he tried to build it up. It was the most horrific piece of propaganda I've ever seen in my life, because he picked on one person, gave him a platform, and this thug, who, sure, he probably did enjoy swinging his fists at, a handful of others who enjoyed swinging their fists at him, and tried to build it out as if this was the Russian male psyche, as if he tried to build it out as the Russian man has to prove his virility by beating other people up. Look, I admit I am slightly biased because I've built a life here, but how have I been able to build a life here? I'm not a confrontational person. My parents may disagree with that, but that's more an opinion-based thing. I don't see the point in confrontation along these lines. And this country has welcomed me, it's given me a home. But even if I hadn't, even if I'd never set foot in Russia, what's the one thing I would do? Actually go there and get a balanced view. That is what your job is as a journalist. If you're going to present a documentary, give us some sort of a show. Hatchie job doesn't even do the term justice. It was horrific.
Alexander,
sorry.
What's your cat's name, by the way? I forgot.
This one?
Yeah.
Well, she has several, but main is Cleopa, but because she's so big, we call her Donut. Ponchik.
Donut.
Ponchik.
Ponchik. And there's
Donut
showing us Nala. There's
Nala.
Nala.
Wow. That's a husky, no?
Yeah.
It is. It's a very
husky.
Grouchy husky. She just growled when I pet her, not because she saw the cat.
There will be a day,
cat is
Alexander.
also grouchy.
Oh, really? But I should say, Isolde forces the grouchiness out of this little dog. She's a very calm dog, but every time Isolde annoys her, and one day she will go for Isolde's throat. And
she's gone for my hand before, and I've been like, I can't even get out because it's my own fault.
The main thing, Isolde, all I ask is, do it while we're on air, because that would be so sellable. Like this
it's going to be on camera one way or the other. The world is going to know. Nala is a star here.
Isolde, on this, when we discussed it, I mean, is it a case that possibly that we're overhyping this situation in terms of what people are going to expect in Qatar? As you said, it'll end up being just another good tournament, and we'll all forget about it. But is that the case, Isolde, that people just, it's hyped up now and then they'll walk away and forget about that Qatar has ever been there, even though there will be the Asian Cup and so on, but that people are just going to go, so what?
Yeah, there is a part of me that instantly thinks people being so worried, and I include myself, but as in people having the discussion about what's so wrong about everything happening in Qatar. If the tournament is a success, people aren't going to, at the end of January, think again about Qatar. That's the reality of it. People will not be so worked up about the rights that they feel are so important to discuss now, because the tournament will be over and the next thing will be where it goes next and what you look to next. And that's the unfortunate thing. And just one thing I will say is, when we were discussing about respect and going to other countries, this is just a small analogy of when I walk the two huskies very regularly. There is a family, and I only know to come across them because Simba reacts very strangely. Simba's the other husky, Alexander, with people when they have masks on. So lockdown was a bloody nightmare. So I'm going out with a 38-kilo husky who wants to attack everyone. But as a result, I became very wary when I'm out and about and walking. And there's a lovely Muslim family who live on an estate near here that we walk that same way. And they're obviously extremely religious and quite strict, because their mom will be walking with the kids and she is in the full regalia. And I was very conscious. I was worried initially that Simba, because dogs get nervous if they can only see eyes, basically, if they can't make out your facial expressions. So I used to get very nervous. And I also used to get very conscious of the fact that during the summer months, I'm covered in tattoos and I'm going around in shorts. And all I could think was, this must be very uncomfortable for someone. And I wasn't thinking about myself. I meant, it must be very uncomfortable for her because of her beliefs. There's this Egypt going around in shorts and she's bringing her kids out and she's trying to teach them to have different views. And I think that's the problem. A lot of people don't think this is someone with different views. And I was more worried that I was going to somehow offend her by being out and about, or make it difficult for her to explain to her kids. Her kids are living in Ireland. There are a lot more offensive people than me out there. But in my head, it must be hard to be her and have to deal with that situation. And I think that's just about us thinking about, as a whole, what it is for other cultures. And that's what respect should be about. Thinking about, what can I do when I'm there to show that I'm not there to upset or offend? My views might be different, or how I dress or how I behave, but just moderate it a little. Like, I got to the point where I was considering wearing trousers in the summer months, but I decided it was just better to just basically move whenever I'd see her to the other side of the road. So she probably thought I was actually avoiding her, which is worse. But I think the problem with Qatar is that we are all very animated right now. At the end of a tournament, we probably move on. And I would just say to Alexander, the coverage here by some of the main sports broadcasters about when they went to Russia, and I know you obviously would know John Allen, who went over, John Duggan. The coverage afterwards was incredibly positive. There was it was very obvious how much they all enjoyed it. And I think that's
Yeah.
the thing, is if journalists go and enjoy, that will be what's reported back. I think Qatar will be different because we will have journalists who are there purely as, they're not there as the sports journalist for their publication. They're there as the political journalist who happens to be traveling with his sports friend.
Gisele, you're dead right. Again, John Duggan, I helped when John was coming over from the guys from News Talk, off the ball News Talk, the radio station in Ireland. I helped him, like I got his hotel for him, I helped him, looked after him travel. I met him at the airport, took him to his hotel, walked him down to the center of Moscow. He came and did a lovely piece on the Moscow Shamus GAA club. John fell in love with Russia, and he fell in love with Russians, and he fell in love with Russian culture and life. He respected people, but that's John. John might get criticized, for example, for different things. That, he was very close to the former head of the Irish Football Association of Ireland. That's John. John's a really good person, great time for him, and he's a proper sports addict and reporter. He's not this
and Tottenham fan.
And Tottenham fans as well, of course. I mean, he was in Frankfurt not too long ago for the Europa League match. That's John. The Champions League match. John is a very good guy. As Gisele said, there are a lot of reporters who will be going for a story. And, when I met reporters here who had come in who'd said that they would never, ever, ever come to Russia, and I met them at the Luzhniki, or someone were phoning me or messaging me on Twitter saying, like, oh, can you get me this, you get me this? That's fine. But in fairness, when they came, they reported positively. They were very positive about the place. And again, that's all you can ask. Just be, as Andrew said, be balanced, be honest. If you see something bad, say it's bad. On a regular basis, I'll complain about the chips now in the McDonald's. That the McDonald's chips, as Tim has pointed out, are not McDonald's chips. We went to a park today and we got nice little slim chips that were kind of, he said, these are McDonald's chips.
But it's not McDonald's.
Say again?
It's not McDonald's anymore.
Oh, yes, of course, not McDonald's.
That's what I was telling my kids also, because I got this cheeseburger and it's all double cheeseburger. It's all smashed. And I tell them, it's different. They say, but it tastes the same. But I said, but it's smashed. It's not McDonald's. It might taste the same, but it's not McDonald's.
And they have.
I did it twice. I thought, maybe I should choose another location and go to what it's called, Tochka.
Tochka Vkusne.
Whatever. Yeah, whatever. I went to another, and I got this same smashed double cheeseburger. It was
the hamburgers are crushed. Yeah,
smashed, like somebody was beating it up.
But maybe the one thing
is the same, but you don't want to eat it.
I know it's not as appetizing. The one thing I will say, Coca-Cola has changed its name to Dobry, meaning good cola. It's the same. Even the packaging is identical. Even
and Pepsi Cola is Chernogolovka now.
That's okay.
It's totally the same.
Okay, we're going to. I'm going to play one little small thing because we're going to wrap up. I know Gisele wants to or needs to run away. We want to cover one story that broke. This week we've been covering all along, and it's not a good news story, but this is hard to watch personally looking at it. But we're going to discuss because we've got two legal eagles, and Keegan McGibbon is going to join us in a moment as well for his last little part. So just listen to what has to be said.
I've been here almost 8 months, and people with more severe crimes have gotten less than what I was given. I want to also apologize for this mistake. I said in my first court that yes, I plead guilty. I did not intend to do this, but I understand the charges brought against me, and I just hope that that is also taken into account too as well, that I did plead guilty.
Now that is Britteny Griner. We've been covering her plight since February, and of course she was arrested for bringing hashish oil cartridges, vape cartridges into Russia. She was stopped. She It was the 17th of February. She's coming back in to play for a team in Ekaterinburg, and she was initially given a 9-year sentence. She has had over a year cut off for the time already served, and there should be another appeal on it. And Alexander, I want to start with you. In the legal community, what's the kind of the attitude to this? Because as I've got before, she should be already out, but the US seem determined to sort of almost make an example of her.
Well, I mean, it's really hard to comment because I mean, it's really sad to see her behind the bars, and I understand that she's saying that she made a mistake of bringing that oil, and it's banned in Russia, but I mean, the sentence is so big for me. It's I mean, she was not intending to sell it or to get youngsters involved in doing drugs or anything like that. As I understand, she has some problems with her back pain, and all these things should have been, I think, considered. I don't want to discuss the judge's decision, but for me, this sentence as a person, not even as a sports lawyer or just as a simple person, I think it's enormous. I don't think that this such a crime, since it's a crime in Russia, should deserve such a jail term. But as you mentioned, I think there's something behind everything that is happening around now, and I have to know what is happening to talk about it. But I don't have all the information, unfortunately. But it's really, really sad. I mean, I'm very, very sad for her. It's we have a lot of American basketball players, both less women now, but more men playing in the league. We have a lot of hockey players from the States and Canada playing here, and I think it sends a bad message. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
For them also.
I spoke with a mutual friend of ours, actually three of our friends, myself, Andrew as well, and Sergei Kuzmin. His daughter works with VTB basketball and with CSKA as well, and I had worked with CSKA, and her, as she mentioned to me last time I met her, was that they've had more American basketballers come into Russia this year than last, but then again, that's with COVID restrictions and so on, and it hasn't stopped people coming in. And I've been through actually one contacts in the US Embassy, and also with one religious organization who are like looking after or helping her out as well. They're worried about it now because they feel that chances to send her home have been stopped. It's an awful situation. We see, like, I mean, she's 32 years of age. She, unless some miracle happens, she's going to stay in prison. I'll just come straight to Cian. Cian, you were covering with us here as we were going along. I mean, it's an awful difficult situation for her, and it doesn't seem good in any way, shape, or form.
No, it doesn't. She looks like a broken woman, to be brutally honest, Alan. I'm 32 years of age. I don't know how I deal with that sort of a situation myself. If I was in that situation, if it was from my own personal perspective. So to me, just looking at that footage, she just looks like a really broken woman. And here's hoping that something is done in the near future to try and get her out a little bit sooner than what it is at the moment.
Alan, you're on mute. You're on mute, Alan. Second time tonight. We're doing well.
There you go. Twice.
Third time tonight.
Oh, third time. Yes. Excuse me. Sorry. Someone got third time lucky. So we'll close up very soon after this because we are over time, and I know that Andrew and Gisele have to run away as well. Gisele, just to you on that for a quick one. I mean, all I can say is that from a legal point of view, everything's done by the book. In Ireland, for example, what would someone get for a similar crime, for having a similar amount of drugs on their person?
you certainly wouldn't, unless you had a history of previous convictions, you would not in all likelihood get a custodial sentence. There is also a difference, look, when you're coming into a country, but for what she brought in, I would not expect a custodial sentence for a first-time offence. But the other thing I think we have to, there are multiple layers of factors. When someone commits an offence, you look at whatever the statute in Ireland sets down as, let's say, your maximum sentence, and then you work back. So let's say for an offence, you say the minimum sentence, or the sentence is 3 years, for argument's sake. And then you say, well, was it a first offence? Okay, so let's take off a little bit, because this isn't something they've been caught doing before. Is there remorse? And keep working back. But you can also work up if there are aggravating factors, etc. But the idea and the central tenet behind criminal justice in Ireland is meant to be proportionality, and that runs through all our law here. So if you're sentencing someone, the sentence is proportionate to the crime. And what you are trying to achieve by the sentence is to punish someone for what they have done with a restorative effect on society, supposedly. Now, that goes out the window a lot of the time, in my view. But as Alexander rightly pointed out, the sentence is very difficult to, I suppose, reconcile with the remorse shown, the way the crime was committed, in the sense that this wasn't someone bringing in a huge amount for sale or supply. It looks like someone accidentally left something in her bag and didn't think any more of it, because she was coming in and out of the country. And it's just very unfortunate when someone, by virtue of their nationality and by virtue of circumstances beyond their control, has now essentially become a political pawn, which has led to both sides becoming entrenched. And I don't think I can criticise the judiciary for simply doing their job in basically working through what the legal process is, which is to sanction someone for a crime. The sentence length is questionable, but we also don't know what other forces are to play, and there shouldn't be other forces at play, because your job as a judge is just to sentence. But it's a very difficult human story.
And again, it was a female judge both times, and that it's not a jury. So it's just a single person making a decision, which is extremely hard. And you have the code, you have the book, and what can you say? Because this person is really famous, we can cut off, or there's pressure. It is extremely difficult. Andrew, just to wrap up on this one, I mean, she's a huge star in the Academy work. She's been there for many years, won many titles with them. Truly liked by a lot of people. Like in terms of with journalism, I mean, I found that the Russian media have covered it kind of very, very cautiously.
I mean, I've mentioned her name to some of my friends here, and they do this as a litmus test quite often. They really know nothing about the case. They honestly don't. I think, look, when you're a high-profile person, as Britteny Griner is, forget, before we get into the factors going on behind the scenes that we realise are certainly playing into the situation dragging on as long as it has. The decision is, it must be so hard to truly trust. And I'm not trying to make a criticism of anybody, more of just of human nature. When you're judging somebody of such high profile, to be truly fair and level, it must be difficult. I'm not trying to excuse a sentence at all. I'm not. I personally do also feel that the sentence is quite hard to understand, but when it's a high-profile person, yes, your job is to be absolutely dispassionate and treat everybody equally the same. The simple fact is there already is a conditioning in your head. This is a high-profile person of that nationality. The one thing I would say that surprised me is she's like you mentioned, like we all know, she's played in Yekaterinburg for many years. She's come back again and again and again. She herself feels comfortable. She feels like it's her home here. She's mentioned this, and I don't think anybody believes that she's fabricating that. The evidence is there. She keeps coming back. However good the money may or may not be, to come back to a place so often, you've got to feel at home. You've got to be part of the fabric here. So I don't believe anybody truly believes she would intentionally jeopardize all of that when, look, she's 32. She's not 22.
No.
Why would she jeopardize all of that intentionally to such a harsh degree.
One thing is I will mention that a lot, like for example, the comedian Andrew Schultz from America, he and some buddies they were laughing at it. They said, let her sit in jail. She brought drugs. We wouldn't bring our drugs into another country, and so on and so forth. That's not nice to. Yeah, someone made a mistake, but don't laugh at them over it. And also, there was a big build-up this week in America before the 24th, 25th, when they were building up to this appeal date, that a lot of people were, for example, putting out videos of her standing for the Russian national anthem. Remember, she refused to stand for the American national anthem. She didn't even come onto the court for the American national anthem at WNBA games. She felt she was making a protest about it, but she stood for the Russian national anthem. And because that's a huge factor in all of this. And this was playing out. If you look at social media about it, there's a huge segment. These are people who were allowed on Twitter, were pointing it out, and they weren't all far right as well. So on that, I know Cian joined us late, but to end up, because I know Andrew's going to do a recording, Gisele has to go to relax. Alexander has to go and watch the Commanders win and go 4-4 on the year. Cian is going to hate us all because we're going to go off air just as he's come on. But I have a little of what happens next for you all, okay? This is one Tomo Piplica, and you'll like it. So just tell me what happens next. I'll give you all a chance. Here we go. What happened next? I'll play it again for you, okay? So watch carefully. Watch carefully. What happened next? Alexander, I'll start off with you. What happened next?
A penalty.
Okay, that's a very good guess.
There's a guy lying. I think somebody pushed him. So
okay, good. Cian.
Something completely off the wall. Ball goes up into the air. Keeper goes to try and claim it. Goal collapses.
Oh, no, but not bad. Not bad. Andrew.
I'm awful at these. I'm going to guess the ball rebounds off the crossbar. The keeper thinks it's gone behind, but it sort of bounces back in the backspin, takes it into the goal when he's wandered off thinking it's a corner or goal kick or something.
No, that's quite good now. That's very good. You're in the lead so far. Isolt.
Ball goes off the keeper's head and he effectively heads it into the goal.
Mohan Colleen, well done. Mohan Colleen is a good girl.
Finally, someone got one of these good. Guess what happens next?
That might be the first one.
Alan, you should do a VAR because there's a penalty. I assure you.
There's no VAR. There is definitely no VAR.
This is the Bundesliga. So this is what happens. So watch what happens. This is just amazing. This is from Tomo Piplica from Energy Cottbus.
It's exactly as I saw it in my mind.
I think
don't dive as if there's some action to be taken there.
I think Gisele has already seen this.
Yeah.
No.
But I'm going to. Tomo was very, very famous. I mean, I met Tomo when I was there. I actually was introduced to him by other Croatians, and when I was living in Croatia, he actually came down to visit, and he was a decent keeper. He's from down this, like his cousin Anya lived in the same town as me in Knin. He's from Bugonia, so it's down kind of like Herzegovina. So they're basically it's a tough enough area. Went up and had made a very good career for himself over a decade playing in Germany. But he was prone to some absolute howlers. And this is just a very quick selection before we go away of Tomo Piplica's howlers.
zufrieden mit meiner Leistung und alle Spieler stehen hinter mir und Trainer und Fans und das ist für mich eine gute Sache.
What it didn't show is his daughter was sitting beside him eating an ice cream, and she kept doing this because they were talking about this famous goal. This is right after the match with Mönchengladbach and doing that. And of course, as a lot of people told me in German football, and some ex-Eintracht people said to me that he was the keeper that if he wanted a result, he was the man to go to. Whether it was true or not, I don't know, because some of his blunders, he was like, why would you do that if you're not trying to let it go in? And he would rush off his line, dive and so on. But like, beloved cult keeper, but that's it. Tom Piplica from Bosnia, of course. Now, I think he's still working in Germany. I'd like to say thank you very much, Keema Gibney. We'll get you back on again very soon. Alexander Zotov, thank you very, very much. I will see you tomorrow.
I hope Redskins play better than this goalkeeper tonight.
Oh, listen.
They can't play that bad.
Yeah.
They were in several games.
Gisele, Cody, thank you so much for being back with us tonight. Andrew Flynn, thank you again as well. Okay. And on that note, say thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed our show and our little end off with a little bit of fun as well. So until next week, I'm Alvor saying take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll be back for more Cabot Sports 3.0 next Sunday night.